David, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Meant to Be Heard.
Thank you for having me. It's always
Yes.
exciting to share and meet new people.
I'm so excited. I feel like your story has such a unique perspective, but it's also very relatable. And so I've been very interested to talk to you and get into it. Of course, talking about your near death experience and then what you saw, what you learned, how you integrated that. But I really want to start at the beginning. I want to start, if you're comfortable, with your childhood and with your upbringing, because I think that really shaped a lot of what you went through and the messages that you learned during your NDE. So I'm wondering if we can go back
Yeah,
and you
sure.
can walk us through what you experienced growing up and how that shaped your beliefs and worldview.
Yeah, it's interesting because just recently I was thinking about my childhood and how my mother was the center of my world. She was my hero. She was a nurturer. She loved me fiercely. So I would say for me as a child, the reason why I even was able to be here, is because of my mother, the way she loved me. Because if it wasn't for that, the anger I think would have consumed me way faster and in much more aggressive ways. But I'm going to share a story that I also feel like shapes how I view love, even when I was a child, and how it socialized me. That conditioned me to see love that way for moving forward. But it was taught to me through observing my mother, the way she loved me. A story is me, my brother, two of my two cousins were at the laundromat washing clothes. So we were just kids and we were pushing each other on the carts. And of course, we probably shouldn't have been doing that, but we were pushing each other around the laundromat on the carts. The attendant of the laundromat came out, older white guy, and he just snatched my cousin out of the cart by her arm and had her kind of dangling in the air, and it hurt her, so she cried. It may have scared her more than it hurt her, but she cried. And my mother came over. There was a Coke bottle on the washing machines, and across from the washing machines, the dryers lined the wall. My mother grabbed the Coke bottle all in one motion. She grabbed the Coke bottle, she smashed it on the washing machines, grabbed the man by the collar of his shirt, slammed him across into the dryers, and stuck the broken piece of Coke bottle to his throat. She said, "If you touch one of my kids again, I'll kill you." This the clean version.
Okay. Whoa.
And the man was very afraid and confused, and he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was you. I didn't know that was you." And that confused my mother, what he said, because it didn't make sense, because she didn't know him. She frowned and she said, and again, this is the clean version. She said, "You still don't know who the F I am, but if you touch my kids again, I will kill you." And I watched this, and for me, it was protection. It was love. It was beautiful. It allowed me to calm back down in a moment where I was afraid. Older man, bigger man, stronger man, kind of confronting us aggressively, and she handled it. So that to me was no different than her goodnight kisses. So for me, love was active. It was protection. It was and the way that she loved me made me feel safe, in this world because I never did. I never felt comfortable here, and a lot of it was because I never stopped having spiritual experiences very early. Lucid dreams, sleep paralysis, hearing people's thoughts and hearing their and understanding what they were feeling. It was a lot, for a child. And then I went to but as a child, I was happy. Like I do remember that. I do remember feeling safe with my mother. I remember feeling it was okay to be here because of my mother.
And somebody hearing that story might be like, "Whoa, that's really extreme. How come she went from
Yeah,
from that?" But you have to understand, and what the listeners might not know is that you grew up in the South in a racist
yeah,
area. And so for you, that was a real threat. That was a real fear. And for your mom, showing you kids that protection was so important for you to feel safe
yeah,
because, like you said, you didn't feel safe and being confronted by this white adult who's hurting your cousin, threatening your family, that wasn't necessarily an over exaggeration from your mom. And I'm hoping you can set the scene. Not all of our listeners are from the US or from the South, and so they might not fully understand what you were going through growing up in regards to the racism.
yeah.
Can you speak to that and the culture
Yeah.
of where you were living?
Yeah, my mother, my biological grandfather is a sharecropper. So my cousins and I, for all intents and purposes, if you are familiar with sharecropping, is not it's a half a step out of slavery. You know,
Okay.
maybe a step out of slavery, one step, you know, but it's a limited kind of existence.
And when you say a step out of slavery, it's like now it's a paid position, but it's still hard, hard labor
Yeah.
working in the crops, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, and payment is a promise of land at the end of the contract, and portion of the crops, perhaps, but it's never really like money. You know, it's a subsistence. You are attached to that to eat and to have a roof, so you really can't just go out and find another opportunity. It's not as easy in that context to do so.
Mhm.
So it's like it's a limited experience, but it's you have food, you have a roof, you know, you're able to take care of your family. So
Okay.
that's what they had. But the stories that my grandmother shared with me also shaped, you know, kind of how I experienced this reality and saw this reality because it was just a lot of negative stories, a lot of bad treatment and horrible behavior. So it just for me, a lot of the stories from my childhood and then seeing the KKK, that was a big thing too. I was about 5 years old or so when I first probably saw 'em, looking up at adults with sheets and looking up at my family and other black people that were lying in the streets because they were walking down Main Street in the town that I grew up in, Yanceyville, North Carolina, and there were police separating the black people from the KKK and just looking at the faces of the people on the streets and the police officers and the interaction, the screaming and the yelling, and I'm a child just looking up at all of this, absorbing it all, and its data is like I assume that this is the way black people and white people interact. It's just normal, you know.
Mhm.
And so the hate kinda took root very early for me. It just seemed normal, like, it just seemed like this is the way it is, so I have to fall in line, and I did, and I think I may have taken it, you know, to an extreme because, I guess as an empath or, you know, having spiritual gifts as a child and then centering an emotion like hate, it really, was extreme.
Mhm.
I couldn't shake it. Like my entire childhood to my adulthood, it was that entire experience was full of the same orientation. It didn't. It only got more refined. It didn't. I didn't deviate from hating. It just. I found more data to support my reasons. You know, to hate,
Mhm.
even spiritual data. You know, so it just became more and more rigid. My position,
Mhm.
and I ignored the health stuff. But I would say it's a catalyst to a change from this happy go lucky explorative kid who just loved to go out in the woods and dig holes and fish. And I went to a summer camp at age 6, and I think that's when things changed for me. I was seeing the kids in this lake that they were swimming in, and I wanted to swim, so I couldn't swim. So I grabbed a life jacket. I saw they had life jackets on. I didn't see any adults around or counselors around, so I just put it on the best I could and just ran and jumped like as high as I could jump. And when I hit the water, the life jacket stayed at the top,
Oh.
and I dropped like a rock, you know? As I'm going down, and it seemed like forever, I realized that I'm not gonna be able to hold my breath for much longer, and I black out, and I hear this voice say that if you could touch the bottom, you can push yourself back up, and this voice is extremely peaceful, kinda sounds like my adult voice, just a real calm voice, and as I'm going down, being calm, like I never panicked. I just held my breath until I passed out. But I was thinking, you know, and then the voice came, and it was just a peaceful experience. There was no trauma in it at all. I passed out. I heard the voice say that if you could touch the bottom, you could push yourself back up. And I responded to the voice. I said, I'm just going down. It doesn't seem like I'm going to touch the bottom. So I was coming back up, and I seemed to regain consciousness because I could see the light now coming through the top of the water, and then I see a splash in the water, and I see ripples radiating from that splash, and I stare at it because it's beautiful to me. It's a circle and a dot that's radiating, and that means something to me. Like I mean, it's an ancient symbol, but I didn't know that, of course, then, and
Wow, so you're 6 years old and you essentially had your first near-death experience,
yeah,
almost drowning.
yeah.
When you say that you heard the voice and then you spoke back to it, Is this all happening in your mind? Is this telepathic
I would have to
communication?
say yes. Yeah, because I'm unconscious. I have to be because I'm in this dense blackness that is kind of like the void that I went to in my second near death experience. And this voice just emerges from that. And I just responded, to it at 6 years old. That experience was very simple at 6 years old, but what happened to me afterwards was where my life really, really changed. We were moving to Germany. We moved to Hanau, Germany. And I think maybe some of the stress of moving could have influenced what I experienced, but it was the same summer that I drowned that we moved to Germany. So I'm in Germany now, and I'm having visions of being in Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the nuclear holocaust there. And it's like, for me, I'm there. My body would go stiff. And my mom said that I would repeat over and over and over, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't. For me, I was looking out from what may have been like a hiding place. And I could see buildings on fire. I could see explosions. It's just destruction and screams and people smoke and people running in the direction that I was at. And this was a memory like that. And it used to happen this way over and over and over. I would go into these fits and my mother said that my heart would be beating out of my chest. And she said she thought that I was going to die in those moments. She thought my heart was just going to explode. She said because there was nothing that she could do in those moments to console me. And for me, like I wasn't even present. Like, I wasn't there. I was in Hiroshima, Nagasaki in this moment, and it was painful. It was extremely traumatizing.
David, I'm so curious about these visions that you're having. So these are in your waking state. They're not dreams, but you're totally disconnecting from your life reality and it's almost like you're reliving. Is it the same scene over and
Yeah,
over again? So it's like a memory. It's like you're
yeah,
tapping into some past life memory where
yeah.
you were a part of World War II in Hiroshima or
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It affected me my whole life. Like by the time I was 13, I was researching why didn't we choose thorium over uranium because thorium is more stable and we can get nuclear reactions from it. So we could have used it as a fraction of the half life. Like I knew these things at like 13, 14 years old because I wanted to fix this world. But the visions that I had also made me not want to participate in this world because the other vision that I had was the future, and it was human roadkill, and the same reactions that I saw as a child to dead animals, which was no reaction. I saw the same thing when people were driving past dead bodies on both sides of the road, and that affected me. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to participate in any of this because all I saw as a child after drowning was death in the past, death in the future, and
whoa.
irresponsible adults. Like I already was pretty psychic, and I knew when adults were lying, and they lied all the time in my mind. And then the nuclear holocaust in Hiroshima, Nagasaki, I didn't trust adults, and then I blamed it all on white people because of my orientation, the hate that I already had. And it's just everything, And the older I got, the deeper I looked in the history of colonialism and oppression, and it just justified for me my position. And I studied all kinds of different spiritual systems. I was always interested in God. So for me, the stories that stood out were stories about martyrs and people who fought, in wars for what was right. So for me, I became fixated on justifying my violent thoughts that were associated with what I thought was getting justice for Black people, but it was very violent thinking. I would have been willing to do a lot of violence for what I thought was right. And I think that the only thing that kept me from moving in a direction of not only violence, but very illegal activity was the way my mother loved me. So that was always for me, it kept me kind of disconnected from this place. It was a buffer from this place. Like I wouldn't do extreme things because I was loved, and I knew it would hurt my mother for her to hear that I have done X, Y, and Z. And also, there weren't
Wow.
a lot of people around me as crazy as me.
Okay. And what do you
Yeah,
mean by that, like, in
like
terms of the
the
spiritual
anger, the
experiences?
rage, yeah, the
Okay.
rage, the anger, the spiritual experiences
Mm,
that even justified it in my mind. The visions that had, I didn't want this world to move in that direction, so I felt that there was something that needed to be done, and I knew we were moving in an extreme direction that I didn't want to participate in. Then something needed to be done, and I felt like in my savior delusion, I felt like I was the guy, to save the world.
So, David, how did that outwardly manifest? Did it outwardly manifest, or because of your mom, was it more of an internalized anger? Or were you actually taking action and taking steps and doing certain things in anger?
Well, I was quiet. I didn't really talk to people outside of family and close friends until I was in my 20s in college. And I think college, there was some happiness periodically in college that I experienced through people that I met and falling in love and all of those things. There were people who would say that I was quiet. And there are people who would say that every time they saw me, I was smiling, but it was probably me smiling at them. And they thought that that was my disposition, but it was what I did to try to fit in. But I
Mhm.
was just miserable. And I was so miserable from age 6 to 40. Yeah, 34 years, depression, existential crisis, because I was from age 5, 6, very early, I was asking for books about religion and God and reading the Bible, reading the dictionary, reading everything, reading encyclopedias.
Did you grow up in a religious household?
Religious, but not Bible thumpers. My mother made us go to church for a while until it got embarrassing for to her to. We didn't want to be there so badly, me and my brother, that it became embarrassing for her to bring us. She was like, "You know
Oh,
what? I'm not gonna make y'all do the choir no more. I'm not gonna make
yeah.
y'all do any of this anymore." And
Oh.
but we went occasionally, especially if my grandmother insisted we would go. We had to go. So
Okay.
yeah,
I
but
can just imagine for you, somebody who's experiencing these spiritual experiences where you're having these psychic visions and you're having these past life visions, and then what you're growing up in, the environment you're growing up in, and the injustices you're not only experiencing and seeing, but you're hearing about
yeah.
generationally. And then it sounds like you're quite an intelligent child to be really seeking out these spiritual answers. Like, was it hard for you to wrap your mind around a God that would allow racism to happen?
Yeah, but I still believed in it. And the thing that I was fixated on after drowning was hell and death.
Okay.
Because I kept seeing the visions of death. And I, for whatever reason, was fixated on hell. Like everything I read about hell scared me, and I didn't want to be there. I think that started my spiritual journey, or at the very least, wanting to understand how to please God. I hated all human beings. I hated black people. I hated white people, and some of my hatred for black people was because of how hard things were. For Caswell County was one of the poorest, and it may still be one of the poorest counties in this country. So I just hated it. I hated wanting something so bad and but accepting that I'll never get it and living life that way. Hearing stories about people who felt as though their best years were high school because after that just work and suffering and struggling and you see the pain. You hear the stories, you see the pain and my father was in the military, so we were able to move out of that place, but the character that it develops is golden though. But the trauma and the suffering is extreme, and some people it can affect them in very negative ways. And there's a lot of trauma, a lot of you see a lot of violence and abuse, all kinds of abuse from people who are just broken. And so I see all of this as a kid. But what I will say is that after my drowning at 6, my internal dialogue became almost what it is now. Dying at a 40 again made it more clear, whereas most of my life, it was more of a warnings mostly because
Okay.
I was always around violence, gun violence, and I always knew when it was time to leave. So I would just leave and hear about the shooting the next day, you know. But I
Okay.
was always gone, and to the point where my friends made jokes about it and say, "What are your spidey senses saying, David?" Because I knew when it was time to go, and eventually they would listen to me and ask me, what I was thinking. But yeah, this voice would always. It was clear, because one thing I asked for at age 7, because I was just psychic and empathic and feeling everything, is that I asked God to take away all of my spiritual gifts at age 6 or 7 years old. And I said, they don't serve me. I don't understand. And I said, the only thing I want to hear is clear message that I understand. I don't have to interpret. I don't want to hear anything that's confusing. If that's what you have, then you can keep it. And I was angry because I had gifts that people call gifts, but they were
Felt like a curse a
it
little
it felt
bit?
like a curse, and then even the explanations that I was getting for, like, sleep paralysis were, scary. Like one of the anecdotes that we say in the country when you have sleep paralysis is the witch is riding you, your chest, or the witch is sitting on your chest, or the witch is riding you, and that's why you can't get up. And it's like that happened so much in my childhood, and that was the general explanation that I got from adults, to where I viewed it as something evil, even. So it's like some of the things that was happening to me that people consider to be spiritual gifts, I viewed them as evil because of some of the explanations, and people not really knowing how to nurture spiritual gifts in systems that don't integrate that aspect of life.
Right. And so once you made that declaration, did they stop? From then on, were you only getting those clear messages?
I get clear messages, but nothing else stopped either. Though it was more,
Okay.
I just stopped paying attention to it.
Yeah.
As a kid, like I would see people, and it would be more than just them. It would be sometimes literal just phrases and words and numbers and colors and sounds, and it was just more data, and I understood it all as an explanation as to who this person is. That also helped me choose who I wanted to be around, because I didn't socialize much, but I always had a group of friends, always, because they felt good. It was because of the data that I got from them, was data that I understood and related to. I just carried a really violent, crazy, angry, rageful energy, and
Wow.
I wanted to be taken seriously because of the gangs and stuff that I grew up around in Oklahoma at that point, because my father was stationed there. I didn't want to be bothered. I wanted to be left alone. So the disposition that I took on was extremely angry, extremely, at least I wanted them to think. I was very open to any kind of violence that you were open to, and even more, so that they wouldn't bother me.
Right.
But I wasn't. My mother loved me, so I wasn't by nature that person, but I felt like I had to be that.
It's like it wasn't who you truly are, but the aura you were giving off and the energy you were giving off because of everything you'd experienced and the beliefs you had of the world was giving that off. So
Yeah,
it was almost like a repellent in a good way for the way you used it, but
yeah,
also
yeah.
I can just imagine it just being so draining. So you said you were
Very
essentially
draining.
like depressed
Yeah.
and just carried this anger and fear for most of your life until 40. So what happened at 40?
Yeah, at 40, at that point, I had digestive issues for years, unchecked, and I never connected my anger, my disposition to physical ailments at all, to my digestive issues that I dealt with for years. I had lost my gallbladder. I had two stones the size of like ping pong balls. I just equate it all to my body. It was completely out of whack because of my thinking, and no system was operating correctly. So I lost my
Mm.
gallbladder. Then hypertension became a bigger issue because now I'm not digesting fats, and that's affecting my system. Even more than.
But at this point, you don't know like the mind body connection. So it's just another thing to be
Yeah.
angry about, essentially.
Yeah, and I've been exposed at that point because I've always been a very spiritual person, and I've gathered books my whole life. And around that time, I had like 3,000 books or so, and I'm certain that some of them covered mind body connection, but there were blind spots that I had because of my focus, and my attention was focused on believing I was right. I was also told I was a genius most of my life, or exceptionally gifted from taking tests in childhood and being in gifted and talented programs and stuff like that. So I was arrogant. I thought that I was right. I thought that the way that I looked at this was a rational way to look at it, and there's no reason to change how I see it. So I was not going to change. So dying for me was like the emergency brake. You're going to destroy this machine that you're inside of beyond repair if you stay on this course. So we had to stop it.
So you're 40. At this point, it's like so much internalized frustration, anger.
Yeah.
You develop these health ailments. And so, how do you actually die?
I'm sitting with some friends on February 1st, 2017. And I feel it. Like I feel my heart valve rip, but I don't feel anything in my heart. Literally feels like something rips in my back and in my shoulder. I don't know if that's just a nerve thing or what, but I grabbed my shoulder and I looked at my friend that was sitting across from me. And I said, "Man, this back pain just shifted gears." My eyes was like really wide, and I leaned back, and I just kept talking, But that was when the valve ripped, and 7 days later, I had a heart attack, and I felt a sting in my chest as I was leaving work, and that was the first time that I felt something direct, in my heart. So as soon as I felt the sting, my breathing changed. I could feel like everything kind of skipped in that moment. And then I stood there for a moment because I'm leaving work and I'm like, do I need to call 911 now or do I, wait until I get home? I get in the car. I decide that I'm gonna go home. And as I'm going home, I'm feeling the sting and I'm, feeling the jolting, breath loss, but I was able to keep it together. But I get home and I'm like, okay, I just lost my gallbladder a couple years prior. So I'm like, maybe I just need a snack, because I would have these extremely painful fits when I had a gallbladder that sometimes eating a snack would make go away.
Mhm.
And so I ate a sandwich and
Okay.
nothing changed. I'm still feeling the sting and I'm still losing my breath. So I yell upstairs to my son's mother, my partner, and I tell her that I need to go to the emergency room. So we go, and on the way there, the symptoms are getting worse. I'm having to breathe deep, really kind of just stay present. And
Mm.
um and then I get to the emergency room and there's a guy, he's asking me to sign papers. I'm telling him I'm having a heart attack. And he's asking me to
Oh,
sign
you
papers.
knew you were having a heart attack.
Yeah,
You knew it was
yeah.
the heart. Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
now I'm feeling the stings in my chest.
Okay.
And I think because of all of the symptoms that were going along with that, either I didn't feel anything here anymore in my shoulder, or that the concern was so on my heart that I didn't. None of that was a concern. But I knew at that point, though, definitely that it was a heart thing. I didn't know the valve was ripped like that. That's something I wouldn't have known. But it just felt like I was drowning because the valve ripped, so the blood wasn't flowing through my body the way it should have. So my body wasn't getting oxygen. Same thing that happens when I drowned as a kid. It felt the same. I just blacked out the same way I blacked out when I was a kid. A gurney was coming out as I was cussing the guy out for trying to get me to sign paper. I cussed him out. I apologized to him later because I felt bad like about it. And he kind of brushed me off like, man, it's no problem. You were dying.
Yeah.
But I'm on the gurney like very quickly after I'm cussing him out. It comes through the door. They came through the door with the gurney and I'm on it. 20 seconds after I'm on the gurney, 20, 30 seconds, I'm out. But I remember them turning the corner and I see these double doors to the area where they're going to be defibrillating and working on me. But I pass out before we get to those doors, and I remember rolling over on my left side and putting my hand up like I was going to sleep because that's what it felt like. Once I had no more oxygen, I guess, in my body, and I passed out. The last thought I had was, "This is going to be some amazing sleep." And I just kind of laid down and I closed my eyes. But when I closed my eyes, nothing stopped. Like I kept I kept seeing and I could see where the people were. It was blackness, but where the people were, it was like dots of light. Almost like a nighttime sky is kind of what it looked like. And I could feel the energy of the people. And so I knew that they were there in that place, but my body was shutting down. So none of my senses were really working properly. It really felt like I'm an IT guy by profession. It
Okay.
really felt, the way that I would describe how the processes that shut down in a machine, in a computer as it's shutting down. It felt like I was shutting down, like, in that kind of way. My hearing started getting blurry, like underwater. It sounded like underwater. Because once I got through the door, I came out of my body, and now I was in the ceiling looking down at everything.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
was gonna say, were you from the vantage point of the bed?
Not
No, you
until it was after we got through the doors, I was still kinda looking at everybody from the bed, and it was blackness. I was out, I think I was out of my body, but I was still in my body, just kind of in that vantage point because I was still seeing everything like I was laying down looking forward, but my head was to the side, and I was like, sleep when I got in there, so they pretty sure they rolled me over and all that stuff, but I was just seeing as if I was just laying down on the gurney. And I was watching that for a while, but it was blackness, and then almost instantly, I was up. Very almost like immediately, once I went through the door, I was up above looking down. But up until that point, my vantage point was it was like I was still laying on the gurney.
Okay.
But it was just
So you have
blackness.
this out of body experience. Do you
Yeah,
remember if you're in one corner of the room, directly above?
kind of above and behind my body, looking down. I should have been able to see my body very well, but I think the people that were working on me blocked my ability to see my own body. But I looked at it and I could see them, working on it, but I wasn't concerned about it, at all. One of the last thoughts that felt like a David thought was, so this is how it happens, and it was kind of like confirmation that some of the things that I had been studying my whole life, some of them were true. Like some of them gave me some good ways of looking at what happens when you die because it was happening, kind of in that way,
Mhm.
and that was it from as far as David only thought. Um, and then I heard a phrase that said, "He's dead. You used to live there. His body, his mind, and his ego is dead." And then I said, "What am I?" Because I'm still having an experience. I'm still there. I'm still present. I'm watching it all. But once the voice said, and it sounds like a deep voice, very calm male voice. I said, "Well, what remains?" And once it told me that my body, mind, and ego were dead, I said, "Well, what remains? What am I now?" And the words flooded in all together at the same time, and it was soul, spirit, energy, consciousness, awareness, light, love. It was just a bunch of words and they just flooded in at
Mm.
the same time. And I understood it. Like I understood it all. I understood all of it. I was just like, oh, okay. And then the next phrase that I heard was, you killed yourself with your personality. And I knew what that meant.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You killed yourself with your personality.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was the anger. It was the choosing to see the worst in people, not just white people, but damn near everybody. At that point, I was so miserable with life, and I didn't participate. Like it's like I'm miserable with my outcomes, but I didn't participate with any kind of enthusiasm or intention. So it was
Mhm.
like you get out of it what you put into it, and I didn't really put anything in it because I checked out at age 6 or 7 because of drowning and those visions and experiences that I had. But when I came out of my body, the first thing that I noticed was a woman in the back corner holding her face with both of her hands, like really going through it, like really sad that I was dying. And that bothered me because for me, what I was experiencing was perfect and I was really trying to talk to her and she couldn't see me or hear me. So I was saying like, what are you upset? I'm like, why are you upset? Like, what's wrong? Like, this is beautiful. Like you can't hear me. Like, I really couldn't understand. Like she could, I was
Oh.
like, this is beautiful. This is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I was like, that body is dead. I'm alive. He's
So
dead.
you were feeling peace on the other side, like it was
Extreme,
everything was okay.
extreme peace, extreme
Okay.
clarity, no pain, no internal tension, none of the
Like a
human thing, a
freedom.
complete freedom, complete liberation from the stuff that I experienced as a human was like it was
Okay.
reconciled. Like it was like
Mm.
all reconciled.
Because I've heard different things from people who have had out of body experiences like you have. Some of them feel connected to the body and some don't. Did you have a connection to that body? Did you know that it was you?
I knew that that was where I lived when I was in a body, but that body didn't matter to me very much. It was just where I lived when I was alive.
Yeah.
I didn't care much about that body, whether it was resuscitated or not. I was concerned about the lady who was sad that I was dying and the man holding the defibrillator pads who was putting a lot of pressure on himself to save me. He was blaming himself if I didn't make it. Like he was saying his thinking was, if I don't make it, it's my fault. And he was just
Mm.
thinking that. And it bothered me, a lot. So I
And
was,
you know what they're thinking, you know what they're feeling.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Those 2 people in particular, the other people's attention was very focused on the resuscitation effort, and initially, my wording of that observation was that they didn't care, but I don't think that's the case. I think the case is more that they were less emotional, and they were more focused on saving me, and where those other 2 were in an extremely distressed state, and I wanted to help them.
Oh.
The other people were doing their jobs. These 2 were like, in pain.
Mhm.
And I wanted to help them because my death was not painful. It was not no suffering. It was beautiful. It was an awakening. It was like
Oh.
seeing things for the first time. It was like waking up for the first time. And I wanted her to understand it. Like I really wanted her to understand it. And I wanted that guy with the defibrillator pads, to understand that it wouldn't be his fault if I decided to not come back here. It would be because I loved where I was at, and it was
Mm.
beautiful and it was perfect and I was at home. But I kept coming back into the emergency room trying over and over to communicate with them. And they never heard me, but I did feel like I could learn. Like one of the things that lingered was like, if I had more time, I would have figured it out. Like I would have
Mm.
figured out how to talk to her. But I kept watching everything for a while, and then I casually just look up. And when I look up, the ceilings that are usually in hospitals that have, and you can push the little panels up,
Yes.
and they have holes in them, right?
Yep. Yes.
So when I look up, I zoom straight up through the ceiling, and those holes get as big as like like houses. You know, like those holes were huge for a
Okay.
split second, and then I was gone. I was in what people call the void. Like words now to me, they don't really matter. We're describing reality. Reality doesn't rely on our explanations of it. It is here before the gift of language, emerging here. But we can call it what we want to call it. But the void is what people refer to it as. And for me, the experience of being in it was like being at home. It felt like love, the blackness. It was so dense that it felt like I was moving through something tangible, like velvet moving against you. It was just beautiful for me, the experience. And I could see a lot of activity in my periphery. But as soon as I focused my attention on any given thing, it disappeared like smoke. And I understood that. Like in my awareness, I said, it was like, so everything is here, but nothing is here, you know? And I understood it. And it just felt good to be in that space. And I didn't want to leave it. I remember emerging from it and looking down into it, and still all of my attention was on the void, even when I was emerging from it. And any movement of my own thinking, like if I looked at something or thought something that was incomplete and I needed to understand something, before I could even fully register the thought, the clarity was there. Um,
Mm.
even
What's
if
an example of that?
like missing something, like you can't miss something in that state because you are connected to everything. So it was almost like before I could think about missing someone, the satisfaction of experiencing them was already immediately felt. So in that way, the attachments that we have in a realm like that, or in a space where thoughts are immediately clarified, in that way, I think that the attachments that we develop in this life, we can still experience them in some degree through the conditioning of our energy, of the awareness that we are. If those things still are ideas that exist in us, the experience of those ideas is instantaneous, and so there's no missing anything, or there's no longing for this, because you seem to be one with everything, in that state. Because I didn't miss anything. One of my last thoughts as I was dying was I didn't spend enough time with my son. But once I got to that state, it's like I literally felt he was there too. Everybody was there, especially in the
Mm.
void. It felt like everybody was there. Everything, every idea, every thought, every possibility seemed to be in that void.
That's such an interesting thing, I think, for people to wrap their minds around the void. When you say it, I just picture this like blackness, this darkness, this
Yeah,
nothingness. And yet it sounds like you have this feeling of comfort,
yeah.
safety, home, wholeness,
Love.
peace,
Yeah,
love. Okay.
yeah,
Just like a love. So you have this feeling like you don't have fear towards where you are. You feel very at home,
yeah.
very safe.
Very safe. There's nothing in my experience that could even equate to fear or anxiety. Nothing in my experience.
That must have been so relieving, David, after
Yeah.
so many years of experiencing that in the body and then having it physically manifest and then just being rid of all of that.
Yeah, it was. And like even when I envisioned how it could have possibly looked from a distance, a orb of light emerging from a void, in space, and how lonely that could look. Loneliness was the furthest thing from my awareness. It was I was one with everything. Yeah, it was beautiful. And when I finally did take my attention off the void, because I was fixated on the void, like it felt like home. It felt alive, and I could see what you described, like this blackness, right? Space is black, but the void, there were many of them, but the one that I came out of, I initially could notice that it was blacker than the space around it, you know. And then when I looked out into space, there were more of these voids that were blacker than the space around them. You know, some were big, some were small, some seemed to move, some seemed to be fixed. And I understood them. I thought, I mean, they look like black holes. You know, that is what I kind of think that what in 3D, these are black holes. But out of the
Okay.
body, experience is different. You know, so they're not destructive to something that is immaterial. You know,
Mhm.
you know. But
Yeah.
once I became an idea distinct from the void, you're a light. You're an orb of light, and you can't exist in the void as an orb of light because it's a dense blackness. So you're separated from it, and then you're going off on your journey. And that's what it seemed to be for me. Is I emerged from this void, and I was off to a journey, and it was beautiful. Once I finally took my attention off the void and looked up, I was in a star forming region. You could see the cotton candy colors of the clouds and the faint forming stars in the middle of these clouds. This place felt sacred, and I said every time that I saw something that interested me, I said or and it was like meant so many things. It meant like what's that? Or in sometimes meant what's that? Or sometimes it meant like oh wow that's beautiful. And it's like but it was just every time I said the distance between me and the thing that I was looking at disappeared, and I understood it. And not only did I understood the thing that my attention was on, but I understood and I felt like I expanded through the space that was between me and that thing. Like I knew the space, and there was knowledge in the space as well as in the things that I was actually seeing. The space was alive, like the voids themselves, but not as dense.
That's a commonality that I've heard from other people who have had near death experience of this energy of instantaneous what I put my energy on or my attention on, or if I have a question, it's just
Yeah,
really
instant.
instantaneously answered and you're surrounded by the answer or the experience or you get it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I get close to the faint forming stars in the middle of the star forming region, and then I stop because it feels like I should not go very close to these forming stars. And I watch it for a while, and the phrase that I repeat in my awareness is so this is where stars are born. And and
Wow.
I knew it. I watched that for a while, and I saw an asteroid going by, and I said, It was moving away from me, and it was reddish in color, but I moved to the side that was on the opposite side. I caught up to it and went to opposite side of it, and I was looking at it from an angle down at it. In the middle of this asteroid was this, like, raised area that was almost like a band around the middle of it, and I stared at it like, "That's interesting," because it almost didn't look natural, you know what I'm saying? Like it could have been made, like this asteroid could have been made. After I returned, I saw a video from NASA talking about an asteroid called Bennu, and they showed images of it, and it has this weird looking band thing in a raised area in the middle of it. It looked the same as that what I saw. And also recently I learned that our ancestors referred to an area in the Milky Way in space called Cygnus as the nursery of the stars. And that's what it felt like to me, and that's how I described it, even in early interviews, that this was a nursery. It's like a nursery for stars, and it seemed like for me, in some ways, it seemed like the stars themselves are what we are, and we form in voids, and some of us form in that way. Like I don't. It's hard to even try to wrap my mind around explaining this stuff, but it seemed that stars and the orbs that we are very similar in the formation, in the
Mm.
inspiration of the formation, and how the formation begins. It seems similar. You know, it's
Right.
an idea that becomes something.
Because when you asked what remains, when your body is dead, what remains? And then you get the answer of light and energy and love
Yeah,
and all of these things. I mean, how different is that from a star?
not much. Yeah,
Yeah.
and another beautiful part of my experience when I was in space was I could see the light that people talk about, the light, the light, the light, but it was
Where was
so
the light?
up and to the right, like extremely far away from me, and the emergency room was down and to the left, and
You could still see the emergency room?
that's where I look when anytime I took my awareness down, that's where I saw. It's what I saw is the emergency room, and I would just go there. Anytime I took my awareness back down to where it was at, I would just go there, and I would be in the face of the lady most of the time, still trying to explain to her that this is beautiful, this is amazing, and that you shouldn't be upset, and she was holding her hands on her face, so
Oh my gosh, David. So you're like kind of jumping from realms almost.
yeah,
You look down and then you're seeing the ER room, you experiencing around you space. And then if you look up, you're seeing
the
the
light.
light that people talk. And is there an energy coming off of that light?
Love. It felt
Love.
attraction. It was extremely bright, glowing, like a star. It's what it looked like from a distance. It just looked like a glowing star.
Hmm.
And what it felt like is a star with an extremely strong gravitational pull. Because if I didn't intend to move anywhere, and if I just sat in stillness, I would float towards the light,
Okay.
you know. But I wanted to explore.
So you didn't have that intention of like, oh,
No,
what's going on over
I
there?
didn't have any desire to go to the light at
Okay.
all,
Okay.
and I seemed to understand that it was a gateway to another experience in 3D that I wasn't interested in that moment, and, I wanted to explore. So
Mm,
I looked at it a lot because it was beautiful and it felt like love, the same as the void, and everything else felt like love there. But I had no desire to go to the light. I just wanted to see everything that I was looking at around me and just travel. And that's what I was doing. But what I noticed when I took my attention from the light back into the emergency room, my attention went through me, and that's when I realized that I was just a orb of light. And I did it like 4 more times just to experience it again. It's like, whoa, whoa, I'm a orb, like, whoa, I'm going back and forth through me, and I'm an orb of light. And it's amazing. And that is a impactful part of how I see what I am now is not only was the phrase awareness, consciousness, and all those things being identified as what I am, but also seeing that orb of light. Like now, I'm awareness. I'm an orb of light that is riding this horse, and this horse is a body, and these
mhm.
bodies can, based upon circumstance, mostly, can be born anywhere, and look like any of us, but it's just a horse because what we are is that orb of light that was not confused at all by any of this human stuff that we kill each other over and fight over and argue over. It wasn't even attached to any of this stuff. It wasn't cheerleading for any side. It had clarity about history of this planet. It had clarity about how these stories got derailed and became trauma narratives that we fight over. And then when I came back, I was fixated on trying to learn these things and understand these things. And I had a friend of mine named Zachariah who had a near death experience as well. And our experiences were complementary. So we helped each other with the integration process and with the grounding and healing, from these things. And priceless because
Right.
I might have committed suicide. I don't know. I don't think I would have been healthy
Oh
had it
my
not been
gosh.
for having him and having in this app, Clubhouse, that I first shared my near-death experience on Clubhouse app during COVID.
Wow. Well, and David, I
Yeah.
want to get into the integration because I think it is so important. But just before we move on from your experience, is that what happened? Like, did you just then intend, like, how did you get back into your body?
Okay.
Or was there anything else that
Yeah.
you experienced on the other side or in space?
I kept doing that back and forth thing for a moment, and then I
Okay.
was in the lady, and then I came back, and I was talking to the woman again, trying to get her to hear me and explain to her what was happening, and they resuscitated me, and it made me upset.
Brought you just back into your body.
Immediately. I went from standing in her face talking to her to looking at her, trying to find
It
her
was like
from yeah,
instant.
now I'm looking at her from across the room, still talking to her. Because as soon as I opened my eyes, I looked at her and I said, "Are you okay?"
Are you
And I
okay?
asked the guy with the defibrillator pads, "Are you okay?"
Oh.
And he cut me off and he said, "Oh man, are you okay?" And then I heard a voice from the right. A person asked me, "You didn't feel that?" And I guess he was talking about the electricity. I was about to say, I remember the words just about to just come blurt out, like, "Feel what?" You know? I was about to say, "Feel what?" Because I didn't feel anything at all. Everything I felt was out of body, and it was perfect and amazing. But as far as when I came back, it was just like waking up from a nap, like a beautiful dream. So I was about to say, "Feel what?" But I looked down and I could see like a gel pack on my chest,
Mhm.
and it had indentions in it that were the same size as the defibrillator pads that the guy in front of me was holding, and he literally was leaning in like he was about to do it defibrillate me again when I opened my
Right.
eyes, and that's when my human mind caught up and was like, "Ah, you really did leave here. You were gone, like, you were gone for a minute, and, you died." And, the proof for me is I am not the same person now that I was before.
Okay.
I have no, I don't even have ability to hate people because the stories to me are just stories now. It's just trauma narratives. And when I see a person that is in a state of hate, I know that trauma put them there because it's what put me in that state. And more than anything, I have sympathy for that person. I feel for that person for being in that state because you can't see reality clearly when you have extreme amount of anxiety and fear and you're triggered and you hate everybody. You can't see reality clearly and things that you will deduce from reality will be anxiety inducing ideas and fear inducing ideas because that's the state that you're in. And
Yes.
I'm not going to blame people for that because I was in that state for 34 years straight.
Right.
And I couldn't get out of it.
That's why you have such an important message to share, and I'm just so grateful that you came on the podcast, that you're sharing this because it's
Yeah,
like, you're not the only one, right? Like, you
yeah,
really aren't, and one of my favorite quotes that I probably say on a weekly basis is, "You don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are."
it's the absolute truth.
It's like, that's what I keep hearing from you is like your beliefs were shaping what you saw, and then you're constantly fact finding just to prove your narrative,
That's it.
to prove your worldview, and that's
Yeah,
just all you're seeing is this negativity, this fear, this anger, this and so
yeah.
how did going through this shift you and change you? Like, were you this instantly changed person? What was
Mhm.
the integration like?
When I came back, I just felt lighter, but the depression was more extreme, and it still may have been. I don't know. I think some of it was the surgeon told me that after you have heart surgery, you go into a deeper depression just from your heart stopping and starting. I don't know, but he said most people after heart surgery go into a depression. I didn't care. I've been depressed for 34 years, so I was like, it can't be much different. But after heart surgery, that depression was different, and part of it, the difference was the amount of suffering that came from healing from having your chest cracked open and my heart valve was replaced with a pig valve, and that's what's saving me now is a pig's aortic valve, you know.
Wow. Okay, you feel lighter, however, you
Yeah.
still have that depression.
And depression is like now what happens when I leave. So since my NDE, it's the same roller coaster ride that I had before. Quitting jobs
Mm.
before was anger, but it's the same roller coaster ride now. But it's the same energetic experience, this high and this low.
But are you experiencing it differently? Like, even
Very
these things that
different.
are happening, instead of being angry about it, moving through it a bit more with a bit less
Yeah.
of an attachment?
Way less attachment. And
Mhm.
so I noticed that because I'm not failing due to my disposition or because of anger, I literally feel proud of myself, even though the struggle is still as real as it's ever been, even now,
Mm.
you know. And I feel proud of myself because it's not me that's doing this to myself anymore. It's just circumstance, and these are circumstances that have happened to thousands of people. Layoffs and federal budget cuts. So why would I look at the world as if it's uniquely singling me out when there's probably 30 to 60,000 other people who had the exact same story? So it's like the way that I look at everything now is not from a perspective of woe is me. It's more like this is the problem and I need a solution. I understand hopelessness
Yeah,
and I understand most of the time we exacerbate our pain and our suffering with our attention because it's a habit. Like is we are habitually stuck on what we're stuck on, addicted to what we're addicted to, and we keep ourselves in these cycles of suffering with our
right.
own attention because we can be having the best moment of our life. And after that moment, we're going to put our attention back on a memory, to put ourselves back in the state that we think we deserve, because we don't ever feel like we deserve to be happy, it seems, a lot of us.
We get so used to these states, or we get
Yeah.
almost like addicted to it. And that's what we go back to always. It's like our homeostasis,
Yeah.
what we feel the most comfortable, even if it's anger or
Exactly.
resentment or frustration. And it's like, why would I want to experience that all the time? But we're just so used to it. We just keep going back there.
Hmm. And then it becomes a part of our identity, and we lose sight of the fact that after you've experienced enough anger, you can choose to be in a different state. You can choose another emotion. You can choose something else. But once you identify with a state or identify with an emotion, it's just who you are now. And you're not really going to even imagine that choosing something else is possible because you think you are who you are. And we allow so much to define us. All of these things that have been assigned to us, the Democrat, Republican, white, black, Southern, Northern, it's just identity things that we become so proud of that it makes it complicated for us to interact with people who don't share those same identity markers. And it's like, why are you proud of a word? Why are you proud of a circumstance?
Did you identify with any of those markers that you just listed?
Yes.
And not prior to your experience, but
Oh,
I mean like during your experience,
no.
when you were on the other side? No. So you don't remember feeling like you're black or you're,
Mm.
because I'm so curious, and the other side, like race, gender, age.
When I came out of the void, I didn't have any personal human references anymore. Everything was instantaneous learning and instantaneous integration and knowing out of the body. So
Hmm.
I don't think that we take even the things that we're the most proud of. I don't think we take any of those identity markers with us when we leave this place. I don't even think the ideologies, the religions, none of it. I don't think we take it at all. It's not real. It's human words and stories and life is what's sacred here. The fact that we get to have this experience, not the gifts that come with it, like words and storytelling and the trauma narratives that we've created in our human experiences because of our misbehavior. And now what I see now is that there's a healthy way of seeing reality that allows you to operate with principles and virtues and morals and all of the things that all of the ancient traditions and even the Bible teaches you. It allows you to see it as an opportunity to become it versus read it in a book as if that's the only place where those ideas live. No, they live in
Hmm.
you. And if you don't embody them, it's just a story, and I don't really need to hear it from you, because I need to see it from you, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Gandhi's quote, "Let my life be my message."
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Because we all have
Hmm.
Bibles. I can go read the same scriptures you're quoting in my Bibles. I can go
Hmm.
read it. You don't have to read it for me, but you can show me the idea and the way you live. If you're pointing your finger at me and accusing me of anything, you've missed a huge point of that story, of those stories that are in there.
Great point, David. How did your identity shift then from pre NDE to now?
I think detaching from all of the stories, the history, the identity stuff, the words, it allows me to just see myself as awareness and as love, as the idea that I value, not the ideas that I inherited or the ideas that were, pushed upon me when I, emerged here, or the things that I accepted as I was socialized or conditioned here through
Hmm.
experiences without awareness. But with awareness, I understand that a lot of the ideas that I'm attached to, I was conditioned to be attached to them. With awareness, I can choose whether or not some of these ideas are useful for me or are they not useful for me. With awareness, I can observe that some of the habits that I have are based upon this is just the only way that I've known to do stuff or see things. And in seeing that now, you can say, okay, are there other ways of seeing things? Are there other ways of doing things? And you find other ways of doing it when you can see that the way that you're doing it, you didn't choose it. You never chose. Most of us don't choose anything in this reality. We react to it. We react to everything. We're not responding to it with awareness. We're reacting through triggers, and it's just one trigger to the next. I went from one trigger to the next for a very long time in my life without giving myself the ability to pause and respond to reality. I was just having these triggered reactions to everything. And that's not living, that's like an automaton. Like you just have buttons, and if anybody knows those buttons, they can make you do any damn thing, you know.
Yeah, we're so easily controlled by other people,
Yeah,
held hostage
yeah.
by our triggers and unaware of them.
So out of the body, when I kept bringing my attention back and forth, and I realized I was a orb of light,
Yes.
another word that I feel best describes what I was attention. So I am attention. I am that. Wherever I put my attention, and when I was out of the body, was where my experience happened, is when my awareness grew. Same thing here now. I am attention. If I put my attention on being David, I'm David in that moment. If I put my attention on being a listener, I'm a listener in that moment. If I put my attention on being an orator, I'm an orator in that moment. But I am where my attention is, and I'm not attached to anything that I need to be in that moment. I am in a moment being what I need to be in that moment. But as far as when I leave that moment, I'm no longer that thing anymore. I am something else having another moment in another circumstance.
You know what, David, I feel like I had an aha moment from what you just said, from what you experienced in your NDE of you were just attention. And I'm just thinking about we've all heard all there is now and that attention piece and where you are and the attention that you give it, that is your presence. But sometimes and oftentimes, this is what if we're moving through life unconscious, maybe we're having a conversation with somebody, but our attention is somewhere else.
Often.
Maybe we're right. We're
Mhm.
like worrying or stressing or thinking about something else. And that's where we actually are. We're not
Yeah.
in front of the person having that experience unless we're present, unless we're consciously putting our attention there. And so I just feel like I'm having this aha moment of where our attention goes, energy flows. And
Yes.
sometimes that is daydreaming and
Yeah.
stressing and worrying and worst case scenarioing. And then you almost get in this state where you move through life and you're like, What just happened there? What did I
Yep.
just do?
Exactly.
Oh, I don't feel like I really showed up the way that I would have wanted to if I was present
Exactly.
because I was so distracted because my attention was somewhere else and that's where I actually was.
And oftentimes the biggest distracting things are stressful things. So if your attention is somewhere stressful, like oh man, my rent is due, and somebody is talking to you in that moment, when you become present, how if you come back present in that moment, what you bring back with you is what your attention was on. And that's the stressful, triggering the stuff. And ultimately, and often we project that onto the person in front of us instead of having a real dialogue in a moment that's appropriate. We're not even appropriate because we're not even present. Our attention is in this stressful state, and we bring that stressful state back to the moment, and then we blow up on the person.
And then we say, that person stressed me out.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
But we were never present. We were never present in a
Right.
non-stressful state. And then that's another thing is that our nervous system is designed to interpret how we are behaving. Like if we are acting as though it's the end of the world and that our life is in danger, then our nervous system, that's what it is. So if you are triggered, extremely triggered, and it's attached to a memory where you were a child and extremely vulnerable, where you may have thought your life was in danger, then the reaction is definitely not going to be circumstantial. It's not going to be appropriate to that circumstance, and I think people don't understand that. Oftentimes we are projecting onto the people in
Hmm.
front of us instead of actually being present with them in the state that we've created together, which in most instances, they're not bullets flying over our heads while we're talking. So there's no reason for stress and triggered states. It's just an exchange with another human being. So,
Right. Great point. I was so excited to talk to you because, like I've said before, your story is very unique. However, I think there's a lot of universal truths and also it's just very relatable because in your case, it was racial injustice and feeling that way. But there's a lot of people who feel injustice. There's,
yeah,
I'm thinking women or any minorities or just
yeah,
people who feel oppressed,
yeah,
rejected, unseen, targeted, powerless. And maybe they carry this like deep anger towards systems or groups of people. And I just look at myself and how, even my algorithm will feed me very like anti-patriarchy, women who are
Yeah.
angry with the way that, and this is a lot in your country in the US, but like taking our decisions about our body away from us, and just the systems that are set up to favor men over women. And there's a lot of anger there. I've been thinking about this a lot personally because I think that anger can be a positive fuel for change,
Yeah.
right? It gets people talking, it gets people protesting, it gets laws changed. Like, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing for us to be having these conversations. But I guess where my question is like, how do we stand for change without losing ourselves to division, bitterness, and hatred?
Yeah. I think I, this is something that I've also beginning to understand what is mostly happening in everybody's algorithm is polarizing ideas, anxiety and fear inducing ideas, and it's easier to convince somebody to tribe up under the idea of we're going to protect you. Here when there's a lot of anxiety and fear. So it seems to be something happening now where that identity politics and all of these narratives and nationalism, Christian nationalism, like all of these things, it's just storytelling. And the thing about it is that in order to feel anything that's not inherent, that's not natural inside of a human to feel, you have to have a lot of storytelling. And that's why all of these narratives and all this identity talk is so important now, because you have to reinforce emotions and feelings and ideas with stories, and identity requires that too. Hate requires
Hmm.
stories. Anxiety and fear of strangers that you don't know requires an accepted narrative about those strangers that you don't know. It requires storytelling, and what we're doing now with storytelling, and what we've been doing for 12,500 years at least, according to our ancestors' stories that they've written for us out of love and responsibility to us, is they try to show us this. And instead of us looking at it as as cautionary tales, we looked at these texts as scripts that we're supposed to read like parakeets. And we are in this same cycle that we've read, you know,
Hmm.
because we won't imagine better. And we allow leaders to exhibit characteristics and traits that leaders can't exhibit. They can't. They can't.
Hmm.
In ancient
Hmm.
societies, they couldn't. They couldn't
Hmm.
exhibit those traits and be considered a leader. You would not be one. But now they're running entire nations, or entire cities, or entire like we have people who, based on storytelling, narratives, identity stuff alone, no integrity, no real change, no real programs to fix problems. It's
Right.
just storytelling,
Yeah.
narratives, anxiety-inducing story and fear-inducing storytelling. That's the foundation of all leadership. It seems now is the ability to polarize people around ideas that are made up and require bad stories to keep alive. Fear, anxiety, separating people. That's what all the leaders do now. And they wouldn't have been allowed to do that in ancient times. We didn't even have enough words to be able to make up the amount of stories they're making up now. You know.
Yeah. But how does one, like on an individual level, right? Like you, me, the listener, if we want change in our life, like how do we go about pursuing that change, but without getting so bogged down? Because, like you, for example, anybody could look at the way that you were raised and your upbringing and say, you're justified in that anger.
Yeah.
The things that you saw, the things that you experienced, the things your family experienced and your ancestors, like you're justified in that. And I think a lot of people are justified in their anger, in their resentment, in their frustration. But it's like, how do we create change and get away from this oppressive
Yeah.
environment, but like not let it turn into chronic illness and
Yeah.
chronic anger where it's just totally consuming our
Yeah.
lives?
I think it's the we have to understand it better and not just feel some way about it. Being angry about it is perhaps natural, but you don't fix problems in that state. You
That's a good point.
You know, you don't. You don't. I didn't fix anything that I was angry about. I was so angry about all of these things that they killed me. It literally killed me. But I don't have a record of fixing any damn problem in that state because you can't fix problems in that state.
Mm,
So for me, is even if it is justified, the more you understand the variables that led to the circumstances that created all of the things that occurred that make you feel that way. If you understand it all and you understand the people, the histories, the stories, it's much easier to wrap action around policy change and addressing these issues and actually getting out and fixing problems instead of waiting for someone that you are growing increasingly resentful for because you are choosing to wait instead of fixing the problem your damn self. So it's all about accountability, responsibility, hope, and treating people properly. Like if that's your orientation, when you see problems, you want to fix them. You don't see problems and want to feel. I just want to be mad. That's not responsible. That's what kids do. They have tantrums and then they're ineffective. They're disconnected from the moment in the tantrum and they can't even respond to you trying to console them and get them back to reality because they're in a tantrum. That's what most adults are in. And when they talk about what angers them, it's an adult tantrum that disallows them to see with any level of clarity what they're actually in a tantrum about. So you can't fix the problem because you're crying and you're, "Oh, God, I hate everybody because we can't stop global, this and racism." And okay, get out of your tantrum, which is valid, and let's think about how to fix this, you know.
Mhm.
But you don't
Mhm.
fix problems in tantrums, no, as adults or as toddlers. You don't fix problems in tantrums.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you too is like it's not that you don't take action, you do take action, but first it's addressing the state you're in and what
Yeah,
you're bringing. I love that you said that you can't fix it in that state. Like if you're
yeah,
in a state of anger, you're not going to find the solution. You're going to find more things to be angry about, like
yeah.
you were doing.
Yeah, and you're not gonna intuitively understand that choosing to stay in that state is self-hate. To love yourself would be to fix the environment where that state was nurtured in. To love yourself and to love others and to be loyal to others would be to do the work that it takes to keep that from happening again. I don't want anybody to die from anger ever again. I want
Right.
this to be the cautionary tale of all cautionary tales that your thoughts and your emotions can kill you if you allow them to. I chose to stay in that state for 34 years because I didn't see any other option. Because in that state, it's hard to see any other options. When you learn things like you are not your emotions, you are not your past, you are not your mistakes, you are not your trauma, you are not the story, you are not your name, you are not then what are you at the end of all of those things that you know that you're not? You know you're not a word. I know I'm not DAVID. I'm not a word. So what am I? At the end of all of that, the only thing that is left is awareness, is love, is the attention that we give to this stuff. That's what's left. It's attention.
That's so good. Like you asked in your NDE, what remains? Light,
Yeah.
love, energy. That's what we
Attention.
are.
That's what we are. That's the
Yeah.
foundation of this experience. The most fundamental parts of this experience is energy, attention,
Mm,
awareness, consciousness. Whether you're talking in spirit, if you're a religionist, scientist is energy. But the fundamental part of this thing is immaterial, and that's
mhm,
what we are. And to see it that way removes the attachment to the identity that causes the strife and the division and all of that stuff. If you are love, then any other thing that you can say that you are is it's a lie or just a
mhm.
momentary. It's functional for a moment.
Do you think there's anything that you could say now to younger you that would have alleviated any of the anger?
Um, no, because I didn't even like people that were happy. The happiness was an idea that I didn't take seriously because of all I saw was suffering in my mind. So if you happy, I was, what is there to be happy about? I didn't like happy people. There were messages that I've heard that are similar to what I'm saying now that I heard them when I was angry, and I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear that. Somebody needed to get hurt.
Okay.
So after all of the conditioning, I don't think I would have heard anything else. I really don't. And I didn't hear anything else because like I said, I've met people trying to inquire as to why I was so angry and inquire as to why I was so intense. And for me, it was like, why aren't you? You're the problem. You're the reason why nothing changes here is because you're happy in what I viewed as a cesspool and I'm never going to be happy in it. And your happiness to me is a slap in the face to people suffering here. That's how I viewed it. It was extreme. So I don't think that there was a whole lot of ideas and words and stories that I was going to hear that was going to change how I viewed it because I was fixed in my story and fixed in my ideas and fixed in my beliefs and fixed in it. You know.
Mhm. No, that's why I think your story is so important to share, David, and why I think that it's so impactful to people because you're not alone in that state of anger and resentment and
Yeah.
frustration. There's a lot of people that are living there currently, and your story and what you went through, because like you said, they probably feel the same way. We're happy people, they don't get it. They feel like it's a slap in the face, but
Yeah.
because you've been there and you get it and things completely change for you, like that is why I think so many people are gonna resonate.
People don't understand that it's not just it's a state that you get in from a repeated choice. And then after you're in that state, it's no longer a choice. It's a state.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
habit.
state. Yeah.
It's your
Yeah.
life. It's your identity, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Mhm. Oh, David, this has been so fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, for being so open and vulnerable and sharing what you've learned. If people want to connect with you, how can people best connect with you?
Right now is mainly just social media. I've slowly embraced this. Like I said, I just decided that I don't even wanted to be alive March 4th of 2026. So I don't have a
Yeah,
website.
and I'm sorry, I wanna go back there actually because we kinda just skipped over that, but, like, that's almost 9 years post NDE, but you made a conscious decision in March to say, "I'm gonna live. I'm gonna
Yeah.
really live this life."
Yeah. There were certain things. I mean, it could even be considered bypassing. Like you have a spiritual experience that some people they adopt this like God must have chose you for this, or you must have this huge purpose. And sometimes for me, the way that my mind worked before the NDE was I'm going to be opposite of everything that you expect me to be. If you want me to be holier than thou, I'm going to be as irreverent as possible because I want to be seen as a human being, as just like you, as just like everybody else. I don't want to be put on any pedestal. I don't want to be told that I'm somehow special or some chosen messiah, guru, or none of that stuff because it's not true to me. I didn't come to this understanding from meditation. I didn't nam yo ho ring kyo my way to this. I died because I was an idiot and I was stuck in that state and I wasn't going to change. I thought I knew everything. I thought I was right about everything, and I wasn't going to change. So I don't get to come back from that experience and act as though I got this clarity or this understanding or this changed perspective because of being great, being some saint. That's not true. So I want anybody, the lowest of the low person can change. We all can change. It's a choice that opposes the choices that we've made for
Yeah.
so long. And that's just all that it is. If you make one choice that opposes the energy or the current of the choices that you've made for so long, then you change. You start changing.
So then what happened in March that made you shift your perspective and say, I'm gonna live"?
My son turned 12 March 3rd. I quit smoking cigarettes March 4th.
Yay, congrats.
And because I want to see more of his birthdays.
Mm.
Yeah. I had a great time with him, just talking to him, spending the day with him. And I want to do that many, many more years. And I just want to love him in ways that I know can help him understand this reality more clearly in ways that I didn't understand. So.
Our children are such little lights, hey, and just
Yeah,
teachers.
and he's
Yeah.
so beautiful, he's so happy, he's happy, and I look at it and it brings me joy to see him happy, whereas when I saw happy people in the past, I was cynical about happiness, but to see my son happy is like the best thing in the world, to see how lighthearted he is, how much, how fun he is, how much he laughs and enjoys simple things. Like he's just a beautiful, beautiful person, and I just want to watch him longer. So,
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much, David. So people can connect to you on social media. We'll
yeah,
have all of your accounts linked in the show
yeah,
notes. Thank you so much for doing this. I so
yeah.
appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. That's another thing too is that I've gotten so much feedback from people saying how much I've given them hope. People who I've literally talked to who were suicidal. If I can help people with whatever time I have left here, that's what I want to do. I want to help people. So.
Yeah. David, your story is meant to be heard. truly, you're meant to be here. You're meant to share it. You're meant to be heard. So thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Meant to Be Heard. If this episode resonated, please share it with a friend, rate the podcast, and hit follow so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at You're Meant to Be Here with a 2. New episodes drop Mondays. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you're meant to be here.